Hello and welcome to Knit in the Womb Designs, where we do all of your left-handed knitting tutorials. And today we are not doing a left-handed knitting tutorial. We are just doing a knitting tutorial. And today we're talking about gauge swatching. And I know this is a touchy subject for some people. Some people like to live dangerously and not do gauge swatches, but I'm going to talk about why I do them and why I think you should too. Okay. So one of the things that popped up when I was teaching my 12-year-old how to knit recently is, what the heck is a gauge swatch? Why do I need that? Do I have to do that? So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So a gauge swatch is where you knit out a square. Usually it's a 4x4 square. I like to do a little bit extra. So, because I don't like to use my edge stitches in my count, because they can be a little bit big or a little bit small. So I don't like to use those. And I like the length to be a little bit longer as well, because this can be a little bit tight or that can be loose. I don't want any of that. So I like it to be measuring stitches that aren't on the edges, right? So mine tend to be a little bit bigger. And what this does is it tells you how many stitches are in an inch and how many rows are in an inch, okay? So this will tell you if you need to go up or down a needle size, or if you're just perfect for the pattern that you're working on. So every pattern will have a gauge in it, okay? And your gauge, and I'm just show you on this ball of Lion Brand Kobu, is going to have something similar to this, where it says in a 4x4 or 10x10 cm square, you should get 23 stitches and 16 rows. Now, I will say I think this is incorrect, because 16 rows, and I know this just from experience, is more of a super bulky gauge. So I think this is supposed to be 26 and it's just a typo, but that's okay. And from my experience with Kobu, it does end up working very much like a DK. And so I do think they have a typo there, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't do a gauge swatch. Okay. So let's say your pattern says 24 stitches by 28 rows. Okay. Then you're going to do this. I like to do 2 extra on each side. So I'll do 28 stitches and 32 rows. So I'm never measuring an edge, because for me, the edges tend to not be as consistent in our stitching. Like your edges tend to be either loose or tight, or your cast on can be tight. This can be loose. I don't want to have to take my edges into account. So I go a little bit over. Now, let's get in a little closer. When you go to measure your gauge swatch, if you are going to block, you need to block your gauge swatch the way you intend on blocking your garment. So if you are going to wet block, then you need to wet block your gauge swatch. If you are going to steam block, then you need to steam block your gauge swatch. If you are not going to block, which I do not suggest, but it's your project, and if that's what you want, then that's what you get. Then do not block this, right? So this is going to be a representation of what your finished garment gauge will be, okay? This will also help you decide if you need to go up or down in needle size to make the garment fit you properly, okay? Because we all knit differently. Some of us knit loosely, some of us knit tightly, and you don't know if the designer is a loose knitter or a tight knitter. You don't know that, right? So it's really important to do this so that you don't have the awful feeling of getting almost done with a project and realizing that your gauge was way off and you have to rip it all out and start all over again on a different needle size, right? So once this is blocked, we're going to pretend that this person is not blocking. So we're just going to measure, okay? We typically want to measure over 4 inches. This will give you a better exact count, right? Because if you have like 25 stitches in 4 inches, divide that by 4, that's not a fun number, per inch to figure out, right? So being able to do it over 4 inches gives you a more precise number of stitches per inch. So this one, I'm going to count it really fast, and I'm about to go in super speed mode. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I ended up with 23 stitches per inch, just like the label said. So that's really awesome. Now let's do rows. You're going to do the same thing. Ooh, and it looks like I may have just enough done. And we're going to count that again. And I'm going to go into super speedy mode. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So we have 30 rows. So my gauge for my daughter's sweater, if I wasn't going to block it, would be 23 stitches over 4 inches. And 30 stitches, 30 rows over 4 inches. So now when I go to do the math to create her sweater, I know exactly where I'm going to be at. Now let's say I was supposed to have 24 stitches to make whatever pattern I'm making. How do I deal with that? So because my gauge is too big, which I know that sounds funny. Wait, you have less stitches. How's it too big? If I have fewer stitches per inch, then my stitches are bigger. So my gauge is too big. So if my gauge is too big, then I go down in needle size, right? So if you have too few stitches, go down in needle size. If you have too many stitches, go up in needle size. Okay, so that is how you will fix your gauge. Now, a lot of the time, the rows will not match as easily as your stitches. Sometimes you can go up a needle size or down a needle size and fix your rows, but sometimes you have to be close enough. Okay, sometimes you can't get it exact. You want the one that's closest to what your pattern calls for to get the best fit for your garment. Okay, that is what a gauge swatch is. That is how to make them. That is how to use them. And that is how you get better fit on your garments, okay? So I hope this was so helpful for you. I hope I made that in a way that you'll understand and it made it easy for you. If it was helpful, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with a friend that you think it would be helpful for. And as always, happy knitting.